Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for news stories from YellowCat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. Hiring managers of Reddit. What is the worst answer an interviewee gave you? So I have one that made both my boss and myself literally stare at the candidate speechless when it happened. I manage a group of student employees at a university. This particular guy was a senior, so he was probably 21 to 22. He was doing all right in the interview until I asked him something to the effect of, "This position often requires you to problem solve and think on your own feet. Can you give me an example from your past that demonstrates your ability to solve problems and create a desirable outcome of a less than ideal situation?" The kid then proceeded to tell us about when he was on study abroad and he stayed out drinking until 4 a.m., then missed his train to another city in the morning. The problem solving was getting some friend of a friend to drive him to another city where he could catch a train later in the day. He spent a couple $100 and barely making it in time for a group presentation that evening. In case any young people were wondering, at no point in a job interview should you bring up how you got drunk and overslept. Never. Not for any reason, no. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Probably using my phone as a mirror. This was when the Nokia Brick was the current cell phone. I would have hired him if I knew he could predict the future, but at the time that seemed stupid. Not an interviewer, but as an interviewee this happened. Went to restaurant for a job. My interviewer was one of the higher-up managers, so undoubtedly could perform any job there, of course. During the course of the interview, she not only interrupted me multiple times to go assist the kitchen and come back, but she would also interrupt me and halt the interview just to have a plain normal conversation with various servers that kept coming over. I could understand the first part, they were hiring, so obviously her assistance was needed a few times, and that was okay. Fast forward to about the 6th or 7th time she did this. I had probably been sitting there for 3 hours total now, and that's just the interview part. Not including just waiting for her to come out at the beginning. I get a phone call while she is in the kitchen, not interviewing, so of course I answer. I'm in a job search and this could possibly be another lead. It was. She comes back, sits in front of me, and already has this horrified look on her face. She politely waits for me to finish, which when I notice her coming back, I do very quickly actually. As soon as I hang up the phone, she flips the F out and tells me to get out, that I'm rude and not the kind of person she wants to hire. Due to my point of view and exactly what I described above, I pretty much tell her I feel exactly the same as she feels about me as I do her and leave with no other arguments. That immediately made me not want to work for her and was not worth fighting her over. What makes people like this so high and mighty? Honestly, what was that about? They were obviously struggling for help and not even that busy. It was an open kitchen. I could see the franticness whenever I turned around to check on what she was doing. After a little back and forth to get to know each other, I ask this question, which usually tells me whether or not the person should be considered. What specifically about XYZ company in this position caused you to apply? The worst answer, which I'd say I get 60 to 70% of the time, is something along the lines of, the salaries on Glassdoor are really nice and I want to make good money. There is no coming back from an answer like that. It tells me the candidate did no research on the company or position and that they have no career goals outside of making money. Like, no S, you want a good salary. Everyone does. That is a default assumption for you when you apply. I'm looking for an answer that tells me you won't simply be a warm body in a chair. What is your biggest weakness? Honesty. I do not think honesty is a weakness. I do not give an F what you think. I worked at a small business, a pottery painting place. I wasn't the manager, but I sat in on an interview once. This one chick came in late wearing a Rocky Rococo uniform. We asked if she worked there and she said, "Not anymore. I just effing quit because my manager is an a-hole and he assaulted me. I effing hated it there." This was basically the first question we asked. The whole interview, she went on to just completely trash talk her old manager and old job, the people, everything. Really bad idea to trash talk other places of work that bad when trying to get hired by another. And for the record, this chick seemed definitely crazy, and I really question if what she said about her old manager was true. This one girl interviewing for a 6-figure senior project management role indicated that she had problems with her previous boss. Sensing a possible red flag, I casually asked what was the nature of the problem. She said, basically, he wanted me to come into the office like every effing day. While I was digesting this, she followed up with, would you want me to work every day too? I said, well, the job is full-time, Monday to Friday, so yes, I guess we would. She thankfully said, then I don't think this job is for me. I was looking around for the cameras. I was sure this was a practical joke, but it wasn't. Once I was interviewing someone for a network admin position. He listed on his resume about 10 years of network admin/architect experience at a Fortune 500 company and talked up his networking knowledge throughout the interview, although he was being very vague, which I assumed could be due to NDAs or the like. One of the standard questions I would ask in interviews for this position is for the interviewee to describe how ping works. I have gotten answers that range from the incredibly basic, it sends a message to another machine to determine if it is reachable, to much more in-depth answers explaining how the packet is routed, the specific byte order of the ICMP packet, how it is encapsulated/decapsulated through the stack, etc. This guy's answer was simple and straightforward. What is ping? Is that a new feature on Windows 7? I've never heard of it. I served as hiring manager for one round of hires for a retail store. My applicant base was half teenagers looking for a first job, half elderly women retired from professional careers. One of the teenagers had a helicopter mom who literally did the entire application process for him. Me and the other assistant manager were naive and gave him an interview. He had zero idea what was even on the application that had his name on it. His mom also tried to sit in on the interview with him. Parents, don't do this! If your kid is getting a real job, this is when it's time for them to start adulting and for you to start giving them some autonomy. For the older folks, we had a lady of about 60 come in who was an absolute terror. She was demanding a salary for a wage slave position. Her available hours were barely non-existent between her constant doctor's appointments and taking care of her son. Her only son was 25 and in college in another state by her own admission. She was the epitome of the I want to work when I feel like it type. I used to work at a factory and I was hiring 10 employees for a new line that was opening up. One application stood out. Have you ever been convicted of a crime? Yes? See other side. The other side of the application was the part where you listed out your employment information. There, under his last employer, he listed his reason for leaving as restraining order. Supervisor disrespected me. I was pretty convinced he was screwing around, and we had open interviews coming up anyway, so I just called him and told him to show up to those. I've never seen such an angry person in my life. The entire time he was there, he was clenching his fist and jaw. Everything irritated this guy. He explained he was mad about parking and the line to get in and the waiting area and the way some other applicant looked at him. I think I could have just handled a smart-A trying to be funny on an application, as unprofessional as that is, but this guy was a ticking time bomb. Not a hiring manager, just an administrator, but I used to be involved in recruitment for the care company I work for. We generally do competency-based interviews, so the questions roughly boil down to, do you have an ounce of common sense? And one of the questions is, if the client refused their medication, what would you do? The correct answers are dispose of it and inform the office, or call the office and ask, what should I do? We asked one woman this who had been working in care homes for a good decade or so, and her answer was, well, at the care home I used to work at, we'd crush it up and hide it in their food. Noped the F out of that interview and reported the care home to the safeguarding board. There are almost no situations where it's legal to force someone to take medication, and there are certainly none where a carer would be allowed. I interview potential employees fairly frequently, but have little time for an interview, so when it goes south, it's immediately over. 6 months ago, I was interviewing a candidate with my coworker that went so bad, we couldn't help but help ourselves asking more questions to see how much worse it could get. He came impressively with a binder of awards to show us. He got each award at his previous company. In the end, we found out that each award was for the company/group completing a project, and it was the paper that came with a t-shirt to celebrate. Nothing he did personally. There are a few for perfect attendance for a month. Those also came with t-shirts. He repeatedly boasted throughout the interview, saying, "I got a lot of t-shirts." I asked him what quality means to him. His response was, "Quality is like when your wife gets her face all made up and you're like, wow." I had to follow that up with, "What is bad quality to you?" Answer, "That's like when your wife wakes up in the morning and you're like, ah." We asked if he could build things as we are a production company. He mentioned his Ferrari he built, kit car from a Fiero, and how people would stop him once on the highway. Then he would ask repeatedly, "Want to see my Ferrari?" A lot. When I drove him back to the main building, I let him show me a picture of his Ferrari out of curiosity. It was a badly painted Fiero with what looked like red duct tape holding parts of a conversion kit. And it was freaking ugly and not passable. It took him 7 years on his account. For fun, I called his reference he gave us of a guy that currently works at our company in another department. He said, "Oh, Pikachu? For F's sake, don't hire that guy." We both laughed, and that was that. Almost wanted to hire the guy for daily entertainment, but that wouldn't have gone well. Hire dispatchers for 911. We have a panel interview with 3 dispatchers, a supervisor, and the hiring manager. It's pretty standard to go back over a document that is required by state law called a personal history statement. You have to disclose all your criminal/family/employment history. One of the questions asks when you last used marijuana. His answer in his PHS was around 5 years ago. Fine, don't care. His answer to the panel was something along the lines of, "I was real nervous about this interview, so I smoked one up in the car before I came in." All at once, everyone turns to look at me like, WTF? He didn't get the job. And yes, I know everyone uses weed, and yes, I'm all on board for legalizing it. However, it is pretty poor decision making to smoke out right before an interview at a police department. I wouldn't do a few shots right before the interview. Hiring an entry-level help desk position. Guy had a really good resume, so we invited him in for our standard help desk testing. It's a basic test that is used to gauge your skill level. The test wasn't used in determining your employment, just if we hired you, where we would need to begin training for you. However, those that performed better on the skill test generally fared better since it was an IT-related position. Part of the test was to load some files on a thumb drive that we provided from a laptop. Very basic skills test. One guy fumbled through it for a few minutes and couldn't get the thumb drive to come up on the laptop. He unplugged it, rotated, and plugged it in over and over. Nothing he tried worked. After 5 minutes, I told him not to worry about it, I would retrieve the files later. His response was an exasperated, "I'm sorry, I could show you I know how to load files on a thumb drive if the laptop wasn't broken." To which I replied, "It isn't. You were just plugging the thumb drive into the Ethernet port." To clarify, the Ethernet port was on the side of the laptop, so it's likely he was just flustered, though he did poorly on the rest as well. Also, we were not allowed to help candidates even with simple things such as this. I wanted to tell him to examine the ports. However, HR told us our verbiage had to be verbatim between candidates, so if I informed him where the USB port was, I would need to inform all candidates. Thank you for watching. Guys, thank you for all of the support and likes. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. See you next time.